Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the latest webinar hosted by the MGAA. This time we are joined with Softelligence, a supplier member of ours, who focus on insurtech and technology and how they support the market that we all work in. Today's topic is on how COVID-19 shapes the future. So obviously very concerned with how we're being affected currently with this current state of affairs, but how will this change how we do business moving forward? Adrian, could you just nip to the next slide, please? So today's webinar has a few kind of housekeeping rules. Everyone is muted as standard. It just helps with reducing background noise so everyone can hear the presentation. To ask a question, please click on the chat box that you will see on the window. If you just type in a question in the chat, then we will address those when we come to the Q&A section of the webinar. Those will come through to me directly, and I will ask Adrian at the end of the presentation. Just so you're aware, the webinar is being recorded, so we will put that on our website after the event so people can reconvene on it, and anyone who hasn't been able to come onto the webinar can also view the material. And we will also be sending out some feedback forms post the webinar just so we can learn and do better next time if we need to. Could we just nip to the next slide then, Adrian? So today's webinar, you'll hear from Adrian Blidarus, who is the CEO and founder of Softelligence. And as I said earlier, they really concentrate on the technology consultancy and digital transformation within the insurance and banking industries. And he will take you through what the future of the profession looks like post-COVID-19. So without further ado, I will pass over to Adrian, who will cover off the main presentation. Adrian.
Thank you very much, Ben, for the introduction. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. Well, we are indeed living extraordinary times, and we don't have an exact reference in the recent history of how things will unravel. What I'm trying to do here is to try to make some sense of the information available and put it into a more personal and subjective context, so that by the end of it, I can only humbly hope that I have presented you with some viable alternatives to what you have, already been thinking and foreseeing, and I could, maybe open some new possibilities. So I will try to touch three areas in this webinar and try to navigate from the personal feelings that one way or another we are all experiencing these days. This new state of affairs is changing the way people interact, first of all with each other, and then with the services and goods that they require. So in response to that, we will try to clarify a little bit how some of the paradigms of the business about the traditional ways of doing business, how will they be, changed, or how will they evolve after this thing will end. Secondly, like any, sane business, you will probably be concerned with your customers, and we believe that the customer experience will drive things forward as always. And customers will be expecting things differently. So companies will need to provide them with a somewhat different customer experience. And last but not least, I will try to touch some areas of technology, not very in depth, so that, you may think of strategies within those areas and maybe, take you forward in the future to come. So basically, as I was saying earlier, the current situation is without precedence. Still, it would be foolish from us not to look at the past and how people reacted in similar events. And if we try to look at the past, the paradox that we will find is that the legacy of most diseases is actually their lack of legacy. So if we try to look at information about the 1918 flu pandemic, which killed actually more people than World War I, most of the times you will get it as a footnote in the history books. While there have been many epidemics throughout the human civilization, the main ingredient of their times was the fear. And even these days, as we follow, the rules of social distancing, and we are pretty much safe because of that, we still feel, discomfort, to say the least. So what can we do with the fear? First of all, I think it's very important to acknowledge the fear and to introspect and to realize that we are in a fear circle where we may feel angry, we may feel unsafe, we may deny the situation that we are in. So fear is not something that you would sweep under the rug, because it has a weird way of coming back to bite you. So for instance, when people are asking about their jobs or their teams or their projects, I think it's really important to be honest and straight with them and to give them as much information as we have, because dismissing anything or trying to make things look smaller, it's just going to raise more fear and more uncertainty. Then I think it's really important to try to assess the situation and try to understand how other people in the community, or even the customers, how they are feeling and what can we do about that. And this is how we get into the learning zone. So this is where we try to find information, we try to process them, we try to interpret the information, and so that we can actually go to the growth zone where we should be focusing on the work. So since most of us are not professional therapists, we just need to get things done. And we need to get things done regardless of the external situation, because in the end we all have objectives, we all have stakeholders, and some of them may be more compassionate about the current situation, but some of them will still be waiting for returns. As leaders, we need to be engaged in the workflow, business workflow, by monitoring what is happening as well as what is not happening, and we need to keep finding ways to get the people engaged, because without our teams, our possibilities to deliver interesting results are way more diminished. In order to do that, so to keep the people engaged and very still close to the business and willing to thrive and do more, I think it's really important to be able to find within ourselves hope and faith. And hope and faith will actually drive us into the action zone, where finding satisfaction in work is actually something that some people may feel pleasant, or other people may need some more uplifting. We can actually celebrate results, even if these days everything seems to have slowed down. And it's really important to try and keep while the physical distance is greater and greater, we should try to keep the human distance and human interaction on with the means that are in our hands these days. So as the next thing, I would very much like to drive you to Menti. menti.com and try to assess your current feelings and try to assess the zone that you are in. Just go to menti.com, you enter the codes, and it's just one click. It's going to take you, 15 seconds. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that you are in one of the zones and actually to see what everybody else is. So if you could do this now, and we will send you the results with the pack after this webinar. I can get another sip of coffee. Thank you very much. Moving on. So since the COVID-19 managed to change our lives so swiftly and so dramatically, it's only logical to assume that our culture and civilization will change and evolve, especially from a structural perspective. What do I mean by that? So if we go back again to history and look at similar events, we can see that the Black Death in London accelerated the decay of the English feudal system as number of peasants decreased, people died unfortunately, and entire villages remained deserted, and the state of facts needed to change. Or as the 1918 flu pandemic accelerated the introduction of the public's healthcare. And you will observe that the keyword here is accelerate, in the sense that what happened is that the epidemics actually accelerated tendencies that were already there and things that were already happening. How about this thing which is called digital transformation? Well, this is not necessarily a new thing. I think it was happening since 2013. But I think due to the fact that people's patterns of life have changed so dramatically, I think it's going to be very difficult to go back to the old way of doing business. What do I mean by that? And I think here we should have a look at countries that actually have confronted this epidemic earlier than us. And if we have a look in China, we can see that the overall online penetration increased by 15 to 20%. And this is huge for a country of China's size and population. In Italy, the e-commerce sales for consumer products rose by 81% in a single week, creating obviously significant supply chain bottlenecks. You will say that when people are going to start moving around freely, they will come to some of their old habits, and hopefully, we will come to some of our old habits, because I would very much like to meet my friends for a beer. But some of those habits actually would have changed already, and people would have realized that they can actually do a lot of things just by sitting on the couch and ordering products online, interacting with services online, and this will actually yield for a new way of customer experience, and the people will be expecting this kind of online digital experience to be a part of their way of interacting with companies, even in the insurance space, where the human contact and human touch was always and has always been an important part of the business. Now, going back and trying to actually map the things that we can do to the states that we are going through from a subjective personal states, I am trying to show you some of the things that you may consider while you navigate from the fear zone to the action zone. And the most important thing about technology is that most of the times the technology doesn't matter that much. Sorry, the technology is merely a tool, and it's really important how people react to it and how people decide to use it. And if the technology is actually the interaction between technology and people is actually creating new social norms. So let's try to link these subjective dispositions to objective activities. What can we do? In the fear zone, besides acknowledging fear, as I was saying, in order to get the inquisitive mindset of the learning zone, it is really important to switch from feelings to information processing. What do I mean by that? I mean that if you can name it, there's a good chance you can get a better control of it. So for instance, you can use tools like data visualization to actually try to understand what's going on in the business, what's going on in the market, and not only you. So you will see that all the big company reports are actually filled with visuals that they are trying to get to a understandable level the amount of information that they are processing. Once you actually manage to assess what's the business environment, you can start to react and experiment. And in other words, pilot things. Now, piloting things, it's a way of dealing with uncertainty and risk. And some of your pilot projects will basically prove to be failures, but some of them will actually get good results. And at this point, it's really important to integrate them into the business processes that you already have. So we are talking about integrating, I don't know, some machine learning applications that you've done, and you've seen that they will are providing you with valuable insights in digital acceleration platforms, so that you can actually get to a point where the line of business applications are actually improved, and you will start measuring results. Once the results are actually going to prove that to be better than what you hoped and what you have expected, it's really important to look at the company as a whole and actually try to integrate the innovation into the company, which means that basically the company will need to change some of the ways in which is looking at things from a holistic manner. So we can talk here about the data-driven culture, we can talk about agile delivery, we can talk about some other things, and I will actually, cling on that, on these things further on. So basically, I think it's fair to say that the world economy is going to take a hit after that, and this is not some, pessimistic prediction. It's a state of fact, because a lot of small businesses have been affected by this. It's expected that the governments will try to help these businesses, because they actually form the basis of a healthy economy. But again, if we are trying to look at the last crisis that we faced, I think it's fair to observe that the companies that were actually recovering better and not going that deep into recession were the companies that were focusing on customer experience. And I think this is basically, not a new thing. If you stop to think, every business, as I was saying, their reason to be is actually to serve the customers. So, of course, people will be looking at costs, and cutting costs is going to be inevitable. But we also need to focus on efficiency, because if we are cutting costs and we are not getting the boost that we would be expecting, then it's going to be all for nothing. I think it's really important to invest in things like automation and self-service capabilities. Them alone will actually help you to boost the efficiency of the resources that you are employing in the business. And also, as I was saying, migrating customers to digital channels and digital portals and augmenting the current customer experience is actually what most of your customers would be expecting anyway. So speaking about trends and industries, Gartner published a report in March 2020 about what's going to help the industries actually perform better. And for insurance, they were talking about 4 things. They were talking about collaboration tools, they were talking about data and analytics, artificial intelligence and machine learning, and chatbots. Chatbots being precise application of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I will try to actually take each and every one of these areas and speak a little bit about what can you do on the short term, where can you take things on a medium term and longer term, what you should be aiming for. So if we look at collaboration tools and why are they so important, you will see that before COVID-19, half of the workers, they didn't say they don't work from home. And from the other half, actually 23%, they say they only work from home during special circumstances. Why was that? Well, because probably this is the way the business was done, in a face-to-face manner, close human contact, and so on. Obviously, these days, this is not possible anymore. So what can we do? If we look at quick wins, we can look at some of our product that can be digitized and exposed to our customers via some digital quote and bind journeys. We can look at actually improving the flows of documents using digital signature, and actually this is a good opportunity to lose the paper documents altogether. And obviously none of this is going to be powerful without cybersecurity, because as we are trying to take advantage of the digital trend, so are the cyber criminals, and we need to be protected as a business in front of such threats. If we are to look at taking things further, you can actually start thinking about how do you put more products, and how do you actually allow your customers or partners, brokers, to do more in an online environment. So we can talk about online products, we can talk about websites, web applications or mobile applications, digital applications actually, that will allow everyone to do a lot of things that they would have done in a face-to-face manner, like not only quote and bind, but policy admin, midterm adjustments, and all the things that happen in a life cycle of an insurance product. This obviously needs to be backed by data protection, because it's really important that everybody has access to only to what they need. Now, talking about a data-driven culture, and this is a topic that I will actually dissect also further on. I think it's the culture is the way that sometimes allows us to process the information that we are getting. And I think it's really important to say that culturally people are actually biased towards trusting their experience, and this is obviously for good reasons. We spend a lot of time, hiding for predators. Then we spend a lot of time where the information was scarce, and the fact that somebody had, experience with something and was invaluable. But these days, there are other ways to actually augment this capacity of human beings. And this actually drives me to the next slide, which is about the data in analytics. And we obviously knew that the data volumes were exploding. But these days, just imagine that we are all in front of our, digital devices, creating even more digital content. So basically, I think there is a huge opportunity in there to actually tap into this amount of data and extract information so that actually businesses can react in a agile manner. So what do I mean by that? I mean that obviously most of you have a central repository where they store the data, be it data warehouse or data lake, or how do you want to call it. I think this can greatly be enhanced and actually quite quickly with the use of cloud tools. I think it's really important that more people have timely access to information. And since more people will have timely access to the information, you need to address the data quality concerns because they will become more obvious than in the past. Obviously, at this point, people can see and run analysis about things that are happening in the companies and the business processes. But I think it's really important to take into consideration also the environment and the external factors. And this can be done by actually blending in external data into the analysis. Then we can help human intuition, as I was saying, to drive business decisions with tools like data visualization. And in the end, I think the end game is actually to embed data into business processes and create, automated triggers that, based on, automated data analysis, can run events. So, for instance, if you want to increase, the upsell or the cross-sell of your products, you can do that by employing, a data analysis tool that would tell you, how likely are your customers to buy some products together, and then you can embed that, recommendation engine into a line of business application, like, the underwriting application or the trade application, where your customers can actually get real-time notifications. It's really important to actually change balance from intuition to information, or at least to intuition plus information. And this will actually lead to what we would call augmented decision making. Why is this important? I think it's really important because, as I was saying, these days, these are extraordinary times, and in extraordinary times, your past experience is not actually helping you a lot. Then this brings us to the topic of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I would very much like to demystify this field a little bit because, even, before COVID-19, there was a lot of talk about these fields. And sometimes we got customers that were coming to us and say, look, I have this bunch of data. can I use machine learning or artificial intelligence, to get some not so obvious insights? And I think the way of looking at things is the way that you should look at any other tool, because both artificial intelligence and machine learning are just some tools. And you should always start with the business problem that you are trying to fix. So, for instance, you would like to automate some of the claim settlement, or you would like to do fraud detection, or you would like to solve the manual referrals faster, or you would like to get better prices from your products to make them more attractive to your customers or to some selected customers. So these are business problems. And once you've chosen, the most stringent of them, I think it's really important to set up a sharp objective, so that in the end, just like with anything else that you are implementing, it's going to be possible to make cost versus benefit analysis. Then you should actually start wondering what kind of data do you have, and if the data you are having actually measures what you care about. Because you may have a lot of data, but in some areas, but maybe not in the area that you are trying to improve. And in this case, artificial intelligence and machine learning are not the answer to your problem. Then obviously the data needs to be reasonably clean, because otherwise, garbage in, garbage out. And the data needs to be connected or connectable, because if you have, siloed data in the business, like, you have claims data, you have policy information data, you have pricing data, and you are unable to relate them, it's going to be to prove impossible to use all the data that you have in the analysis. And obviously, in the end, bigger is better. Yes, you need to have enough data, because if you are barely starting to collect data and you have tens of data points, it's simply not going to be enough in order to be able to train any kind of mathematical model to give you the answers that you are expecting with a certain degree of confidence. Now, AI and machine learning, I think you should look at them as in a very similar way of how humans are actually processing their experience, only they can process more data and faster. And the good thing is that while the environment and the state of the business changes, the models can be retrained, and actually they can be actualized again. Retraining humans, on the other hand, that is going to take a little bit longer. So what I'm trying to say here is that once you've done this, your first POC around artificial intelligence and machine learning, and you deem it successful, you need to integrate it then into your line of business applications, so that human operators can make decisions more efficiently with its help. I think we can talk about replacing some of the human decisions with automated triggers once we've actually validated that that is the right way of doing things. However, human supervision will still be necessary, because as good as they are, the algorithms still cannot think about things like ethics, think about things like the current situation at hand, which can be slightly different, but the slight difference may actually, from a human perspective, make a lot of difference in the final decision. I think chatbots, as I was saying, they are just a way of employing artificial intelligence and creating some, automating some of the flows, conversational flows that you may have. Although they may seem clumsy in the beginning, they can be a good tool to actually sort out and prioritize things as they are coming. And I can actually give you an example here. We had this hole-in-one product, and it was about golf, and it was about ensuring a prize that was going to be given if a competitor was going to achieve some objective. And you can see here that the chatbot is actually starting a conversation with the customer. It asks some of the underwriting questions, and it's presenting him with what we would call a fast quote. Now, what is going to happen from this point on? So, depending on the product can actually be bound and the policy can be issued, or most of the times the customer here, if it finds the total premium acceptable, it can be redirected to a place where the long underwriting questionnaire is actually displayed, and it can get to answer to any question, so that you can give him the final quote and issue the policy. Still, this will still triage some of the people that are interacting with your product, because not all of them will be finding it suitable for their needs. Now, how do we deliver this kind of changes that I have been talking about in terms of digital transformation? I think it's fair to say that there are companies that are on the market and they are 100% digital. So we call these digital natives. So, and the best example here is Amazon. They don't conceive doing anything other than digitally. And basically, these companies will employ some disruptive strategy and implement it in ways that are usually faster than for a normal company, because it's easier to change digital processes. It's more complicated to change people's minds and their way of doing things, and can have an average execution and have a net effect on the revenue growth of 4.3%. So this is what McKinsey was saying in 2017. Now, obviously, most of us are not digital natives. So what can we do? We can actually have a look at what these guys are doing and how they are doing it, most of all, and what's the customer experience that they are putting in place. And we could actually employ what we call a fast follower strategy. So we can learn the things that they have done. We can adapt those to our business. And then by the means of a great execution, we can still get positive net effect in our growth. So what I'm saying is that fast following and great execution are the best next thing to disruption, and they are a very good way to respond to disruption. Now, think about COVID-19 as being a disruptor, and think about what can you do actually in order to cope with this disruption. And we can have a look, try to look on how these guys that are digital natives actually reacting. So I have another poll for you on what do you plan to do next. And yeah, it's again Menti, it's a new code. Just please go in there and click it. It's going to take another 10 or 15 seconds. Thank you very much. And in the end, I would like to tell you that about our learning objectives. I think it's, I hope I managed to, well, make you aware that there is an increasing pressure in digitizing, operations and customer interactions. I think I hope I gave you, some hints about how do you navigate from being frightened to actually doing things about that. And I hope I could actually enlarge the number of choices and the number of strategies that you would have in mind to employ in order to, make your business more robust and actually, coping with this situation, but also with the things that are going to come. And just to let you know that we are here for you. We have some, discovery sessions that are complimentary for the members of MGAA, and where we can talk in more detail, apply to your business about how can you use data, about how can you digitalize processes in your business, or how you can automate things by using, RPA and other automation tools. Thank you very much for being with us today and for bearing with me in this presentation. I think it's time to, for questions.
Thank you very much, Adrian. That's been really interesting and insightful. Just to recap, if anyone does have a question, please click on the chat functionality in the panel at the bottom. Any questions will come through to myself, and we can pose those to Adrian. We have had a few come through already, so I'll just run through those now. Just something you touched on more recently, Adrian, about the chatbots. How does a customer interaction with a chatbot differ from one with a human operator?
Well, obviously, a chatbot, as I was saying, is at least in the beginning, until the training process is completed, is going to be clumsier than a human operator, and that is why, because he is going to be able to answer a finite number of questions, and this is basically what he knows. Whereas a human, well, it's a completely different story. We can adapt faster and answer to all other things than a chatbot would. In the end, I think chatbot is there to complement humans, not to replace them. And I think it's just a tool to do the triage of some requests that could come from your customers, and to route them to the right person or system to actually fulfill their needs.
Okay, great, thank you. Just a more general one in terms of interacting with with the business's employees. How would you say that people should or can manage and motivate employees to maintain a high performance?
Well, I can tell you a story from our experience. Basically, we were having employed remote working before this event happened, but it was not at this level of magnitude. So basically, right now, 200 and something people that are our employees, they are all working, from home without any business interruption. And we realized, first of all, that people have been more productive. Mm-hmm. Secondly, we realized that it's actually really important to still keep the human channels open. So be close to the people, even if the distance is far, and especially focus on the ones that are not in a very good position by the current situation, like the people that are alone at home or the people with disabilities. And I think it's really important to be human.
Okay, thank you very much. Are you seeing any kind of behavioural changes from clients and employees through these times?
That's a very good question. So I've seen especially in customers, I've seen actually two things that look quite the opposites, but they are not if you stop to think about them. So first of all, I've seen that customers tend to think about things rather short term. So nobody's thinking about a 2 years project right now. Everybody's trying to react the best they can to the situation, and they are trying to not necessarily commit to a lot of things, because it's very difficult to commit when you don't actually know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. The other the reaction that we've seen is that a lot of the projects that were going on and that were due to take, I don't know, 3 months, 4 months or whatever, they have been executed in a matter of weeks. I mean, just stop to think. So if you are going to a insurance company or to a bank and you would tell them, so look, starting tomorrow, you need to close all your branches and all your people home and still do your business, they would have said, I don't know, in January that, yeah, this is a project that is going to take probably 2 years. Mm-hmm. Funnily enough, most of them managed to do it on a satisfactory, at a satisfactory level in a matter of, 2 or 3 weeks, actually. And this actually bears a lot of questions about what is really important and what is not. Why are we looking at things from all those different angles? But I think in the end, both behaviors have a lot to do with risk management and with the way that we react to threat. And we are all looking at the current situation as some sort of a potential threat. Mm-hmm. Obviously with the attached opportunities. And in face of what we would call danger, people make decisions faster, they are willing to take more risk, and things accelerate on some areas and are actually moving slower in some other areas.
Yes. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. We've had a follow-up question regarding remote working. Do you believe that a high level of remote working will become the norm after COVID-19?
I can tell you that the level of remote working in our company is going to increase. So before that, we had 20% of the employees doing remote working on a regular basis. I think right now we can go up to 50% or even more. I think it has proven as being efficient. And if I look at, traditional companies like banks, they have employed remote working. And yes, I think it's going to increase.
Okay, thank you. That one question say, obviously there's a lot of challenges going on, but what do you see are the 3 kind of positives you see as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic?
That's a very interesting question because I'm trying to think of the positive things. I think one of the positive things is that once we get or accommodate with the staying at home, I think we realized that all of a sudden we have a lot more time. Because if you think about commutes and the commute time that can vary between, I don't know, half an hour and up to 3 hours per day, I think it's you all of a sudden have that amount of time to do something with it. And the other thing, and I think it's related to the first one, I think that since we are given, all of a sudden more time, we are rediscovering some of our hobbies. So we have colleagues and customers that are, attending cooking classes, we have customers that and colleagues that are attending, virtual gym sessions, and I hope all of them will emerge healthier from this one if they are willing to put their time in investing their time in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think last but not least, it's really important that well, even if sometimes it's an annoyance, you get to spend more time with the family. And I think it's actually bringing us together. And even if, you are trying to work during the day and your kids will come barging into your room with when you are in a conference, I think in the end, the fact that you are spending more time with them is beneficial for both yourselves and for your family.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, we just had another recent question come in. Have you seen an increase in positive and creative thinking, RE technology, as a consequence of having more time to reflect?
Well, I think this actually is actually happening. So while innovation I think it's a team effort. The fact that you are alone and you can reflect and you can come up with some ideas of your own, and very important, you have the tools actually where you can spend time with your team and bounce ideas. I think it's it's really going to accelerate, and just it's one of the things that makes us humans. So we need to adapt, and our way of adapting is by being innovative and creating new tools and ultimately transforming our environment.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. That's covered all the questions we've had through. If anyone does have any more, just please send them through the chat. Doesn't look like we're going to get any more. So just for me, thank you so much, Adrian, for taking the time to run through your presentation today and for answering the questions in a complete manner that you have done. I think everyone kind of struggles to kind of engage with our members at this time, and having these webinars I think are a really useful way of doing that. So thank you very much for your time today, and thank you to the participants who have joined in on the webinar. I hope you found that useful. As I say, we are recording the webinar, and we will put that on the MGAA website for you to view a second time or to tell colleagues. I found it very useful. But thank you very much for dialing in today. Have a good rest of the day, and everyone stay safe. Thank you, Adrian,
thank you very much. Stay safe and stay close to each other. So thanks.
Thank you all.